So, what I'm going to talk about today is what I call scorecard selling. And it's, like I say, it's probably the most popular thing that we teach our clients. I've had people tell me, said, like, I did your whole program, but frankly, if all you had given me was the scorecard to do, it would have changed everything. And I say, well, why is that? Right. And they say that, well, it changed everything because now I don't have to sell anymore. Um, I can just concentrate on developing the relationship with the prospect, and that's the key thing is that you don't have to sell anymore. Okay, and that's new factory, because in the new factory thinking, we don't sell. There's no selling ever. We don't do proposals. We don't do sales presentations. We don't knock on doors. We're not trying to sell, you know, vacuum cleaners door to door or anything, because it just doesn't work. Sales doesn't work anymore. Now, it did. Like when I started my business in 1987, um, I basically did sales for quite a long time, but it was pre-internet. Okay, that was really the thing, and so people, I would just basically find a list, like maybe even the yellow pages, and I would call companies and I would try to get appointments with them to show them what I do. And I was young and energetic, so I don't mind calling 500 people in a day, and most of the people were not very polite, but I'd always get through to a lot of people because most people in those days didn't even have voicemail. So, and they were actually willing ultimately to talk to a salesperson. Um, but that started changing uh, around that time, really, certainly into the 90s, because with computers, sales started to be automated, which was a great thing for people trying to sell something supposedly. But so you had like something like Mailchimp or something, or in those days, I think there was Constant Contact was the first one. So hey, this is great. You can send out emails. You could send out one a day to your list of people, right? So all these emails can go out automatically. And you could have automated calls to go out to people, right? Etc. Right. So all this stuff. And then, advertising could pop up on the screen and that kind of thing. But what happened was, of course, that seemed like a great thing for the marketers because now I can automate all that. But for the prospect, it was increasingly annoying, right? It was like, I'm getting hit up so many times with so many ads now. Um, and I don't like that. So we started to block out, I'm going to get voicemail. I'm not going to answer my phone. Go to voicemail. I'm going to have a way to block out people on email, maybe just unsubscribe from their list or something. And so it just got harder for marketers actually to get through to prospects because people didn't want to be sold anymore because there were too many people trying to sell them something. So I called that the sales pitch bunker. And this was a real dilemma for someone like us who was trying to help people do marketing. It was going, well, what do we do now? Because people are blocking out our automated sales messages. So I realized that was a big problem. So that was one part where we made the shift from old factory to new factory. The customer behavior, the consumer behavior, business to business consumer behavior was changing, right? Their attitudes towards salespeople was changing. And you don't have to go much farther to validate that than just think of your own experience um, when people try to sell you something. One place that's huge in this area is on LinkedIn, right? So I have my 5,000 friends on LinkedIn, all very close personal friends on LinkedIn. And I get a lot of messages on, the email, right? And I mean, how many of those do you actually read? And if you do read them, they're always a sales pitch, right? And you go, oh, brother, another person trying to sell me something. And then a lot of the posts, of course, are people trying to sell you something directly, right? They're just trying to directly hit you up to try to sell you something. And at a certain point, you just stop even listening. So it continues to this day that 99% of people that are doing marketing, or they think they're doing marketing, are old factory salespeople, and they don't even really understand that it's not working that well. It doesn't mean it doesn't work at all. Like if you sent out 10 million emails, I'm sure you'd get some kind of business from that, right? I mean, you would, but it may not be the kind of business you want, and that might be a hugely expensive thing to do. So maybe that's not worth it, right? So all of this just started thinking, well, how do we um, find a better way, right? The other thing that I found annoying myself was if I did get an appointment with a prospect, I would go in and the people were kind of treated me like a salesperson, and they would say, well, they give me the third degree, right? They would say, well, why should we hire you? Why are you better than these other people? What's your price, right? How much do you charge? Um, why is it so expensive? you know, um, etc. And we've got like another 12 people that we're looking at, kind of thing, because they felt they had all the power, and I was in the weaker position, right? So I started thinking, you know what, I'm gonna start changing things around, and essentially it was like I'm gonna start putting it to them. I'm just trying to help them, but I'm gonna start by just trying to help them by putting it to them. I'm gonna change the whole sales process here, and what we came up with has worked incredibly well for us and so many other people, because it was changing the game up, and the scorecards was the key to the whole thing. So in my business, when I have a prospect, and there's lots of ways that I generate those, but once I have a prospect, the very first thing I get them to do is a scorecard. Okay, and I'm going to show you one in a second, but I get them to do a scorecard, and it's essentially a self-assessment. So whatever field they're in, whether it's consumers or a business or whatever, there's a different scorecards, but it's the same format. It is that they're doing a self-assessment, and they're telling me, okay, what their current situation is, good or bad, and then what they need to do to make that situation better. They're telling me, okay. And what happens is that by doing that, they essentially are moving one step closer to buying what I've got to sell. And at no point have I even talked about what I'm selling. It's just that I'm moving them down the road towards that in their own mind. Like they're the ones that are coming to that conclusion before I've even told them what I'm selling them, essentially. Like in my process, you don't actually hear what I'm selling until the end of maybe the third encounter with me. They come to a talk, they hear me talk. We have an initial conversation, it's an hour, and then we do a 2-hour session. And at that point, I tell them about my program, right? So it's way down the line. But at that point, the closing is like 95% because they're all ready to do it by that point. Okay. But the very first step is to do the scorecard. All right. And what I found really, really great about it, as I mentioned, is I don't have to sell anymore. I just don't have to pitch anything. Um, and they like it. The prospects like that because we're just developing a relationship. The other thing is that the scorecard itself provides value to the prospect as well. So part of this whole thing, the principle of all of this different way of selling, is that we're providing value to the customer during the sales process, like the prospect, real value to them during that sales phase, which is not typical, right? That's not a typical thing in the old factory way. So here's a example. Now you probably won't be able to see that clearly here on there. You can't read the words in it, but essentially, I'll show you more of a close up in a second. But this is the typical kind of scorecard. So and it was just a format that we settled on. And what there is there's 10 rows, and then each row is the kind of negative and positive. So on the left, in that particular one, it says, I do not have a big idea for the future of my business. Okay. And then on the right hand side, it says, I have a big idea for the future of my business. And then the person rates themselves from 1 to 10 based on where they stand in that continuum. Right. Now, and then they do all 10 of them with different questions. Like, I'm not getting as many new customers as I want. I'm getting all the new customers that I could ever want would be the 10, right? It's questions like that. And so they go through them and they score themselves. And a good prospect scores themselves somewhere between 4 and 5. Like the actually average of all the scores that we've ever kept track of was 46. 46 is the average starting point. And so if you get a prospect that has a 46, you're in really, really good shape here. I'll talk about what happens if you get somebody that has a 96, okay, in a minute. But if they score that, and then what you're doing then is going through the rows of them having this conversation, which is, okay, well, why do you give yourself a 4 on the first one? Let's say they put 4 on the first one. And they'd say, well, I have some ideas, but I don't know if it's a big idea. And I don't know if it's really a future oriented big idea. So I gave myself a 4. I've got some ideas. And then I would say, well, what do you need to do to make that score higher? They say, well, I need to spend time to think about what my big idea is for the future. And that would be a way to get my score higher. Okay, great. Okay. Like, you notice I'm not saying anything. That would be my advice to them, but I didn't say it to them. They came up with that on their own. And then the next one, "Oh, I'm not getting enough customers. Well, what do you got there? 3. Why? Well, we're not getting anywhere near enough customers. Well, what do you need to do? What do you think you need to do to get more customers? Well, we need a new marketing strategy. We need a marketing plan, and we need a big idea for sure. Like we need to get going here because we don't have enough customers. So once again, that's what they said. All right. So as we go through this, they're just basically pointing to all the things that we could ultimately help them with, right? Now, whether or not they actually do it with us is fine, but at least we have got them thinking about these topics and thinking about where they're at and then where they need to go to make it better, right? So there's a lot of value in that for them because they're getting very focused. So I remember the first time I did this, I went into a situation where they thought I was going to give a sales presentation. There was about 8 people in the room, so it was like the executive team of a company. And I said, no, I don't do a presentation. We're going to do a little workshop. So we're going to do the scorecard. So I gave the scorecard to all of them. And I said, now each of you fill it out separately. Okay. And now we're going to go through each one. And I said, okay, well, what did you folks get on the first one? So they all had different scores, some high, some low, whatever. Created this huge conversation around that. And then, okay, what do you need to do to make that better? And there was all kinds of ideas on that. And I wrote it down on a whiteboard. And by the end of it, they were like so jazzed up to get going on working on this. And then I said, well, the next stage is to do this, right? And then they go, agreed completely. We're going to do this. We can't not do this now. I've had one situation where one of my clients said, look, I'm giving this speech to 1,000 public health officials, like there were doctors and people like that, in the Toronto Convention Center. And I want to use the scorecard in that event, but I don't know if I have the confidence to do it myself. So I'll hire you to come and assist me in this. So I walked 1,000 people through the scorecard. They all had one in their hand, and it was unbelievable what happened in that convention center. Like there was so much conversation because what we did was score yourself and then work with the person beside you to coach each other through the questions. And so there was so much energy in the room. And by the end of it, they were so on point to do what we were telling them to do, which in that case was to promote defibrillators. I was a public access defibrillators when they first came out. So it was really exciting. You can do it in a small one-on-one thing or giant room at a convention center. and everywhere in between. So many stories that I've had of people, they said this has just been unbelievable, right? Because the other thing about the scorecard is we're all trying to get people to think about a problem that they have that they're not either know they have, or they are not taking very seriously, right? Or they're not focusing on. And so this really focuses their mind on that particular problem that you're really trying to point them to, right? And then pointing their mind towards what they need to do about it. And this is what we want. Most of us are trying to get somebody or some organization to do something that's important but not urgent. And they may need not even know that it's important, right? So we're trying to make them feel, oh no, this is important now because I've scored myself low here, and it's urgent because we want to make that score higher. The other thing about the scorecard is that it helps people tell you how they feel without you ever actually asking them how they feel. Okay. Because that might be a little presumptuous when you first meet someone, trying to get them to tell you about their feelings, but they're going to tell you about their feelings. So you say, oh, I'm not getting very many customers, and then they say, yeah, and really it's terrible. Like we feel like stressed out about it, and we're worried about it. And so they're expressing a lot of emotion there often, and therefore that's bonding you with them because you're taking that all in, right? So it's really interesting. And the other thing about the scorecard too is that people are uh, very competitive when it comes to scoring. Okay. So they're kind of competitive with themselves because nobody likes to have a low score in anything. It doesn't matter what it is. um, Anything you start scoring and people want to have a higher score. It even as simple as like kids game or something. It's like, okay, how many acorns can we gather, right? And then so oh, I got 4, and I got 12. Oh God, I got to get more acorns. So we're kind of wired that way. So this is great because it gets people really jazzed up about working on something. Now the other thing is that you can use this scorecard more than once because your scorecard more than once. You can use it like all the way down the line. So 6 months later, for example, well, let's do the scorecard again and see where your score is now after you've been working with us. Oh, well, you scored yourself an 81. And actually the score after 6 months, typically for the folks that do it, is 76. So average score initially is 46, and after 6 months, 76 for the programs that we've created. And that's the score that the client or customer is giving themselves. It's not something we're telling them. So this has been such a huge tool. The other thing, of course, is it can be online. So I'm going to send you a copy of the scorecard after we a link to the online scorecard. Okay. All right. So now the other thing is this is all part of our big idea marketing success system. I did a presentation on that. There's 12 steps to it. So we created a whole system around this. It is the third stage of it, is to doing the scorecard. So it's a very important part of the whole system that we've created. So there's other parts to this, but I'm just going to give you this one step today because there's a video that we did that you can look up on our YouTube channel that just explains this entire system, all 12 steps of it. But the scorecard is kind of one of the key first steps of it. So here's an example here of the scorecard. And so this is, like I say, this is our scorecard. You would have completely different questions on yours, right? The one you would create. But and so everything down the left side, so there's just 3 there, there'd be 10, but I'm giving you 3 there right now. Everything down the left side is I call the anti-model. It's like, that's the worst case scenario. And then on the right side, that's the model. That's the perfect scenario. So if someone got 100, 10 out of 10 on everything, they would be in the ideal condition. Like I don't think anyone could ever get to that. Um, Not really the point, but if you did, you would be in the perfect situation for that particular topic or whatever, or area of concern. Um, so we have, I don't have a big idea of the future of my business, take my business next level. I have a big idea to take my business to the next level. I'm not excited about what I'm currently doing. I'm very excited about what I'm currently doing. So that's a good one in the sense that it does get people to talk about how they feel, right? Um, well, what are you going two? Why is two? Oh, I'm so bored about what I'm doing. I've been doing it for a long time. I'm making money, but I'm just not very excited about it anymore, and I'm dragging myself out of bed. What do you need to do to make your score higher, right? Well, I need to come up with something new to do. I need a big idea, right? I need to, get a whole new thing going here. I need a new factory, right? And as I mentioned the other one, I'm not attracting enough high quality customers. I'm attracting lots of high quality customers. Um, People typically score low on that for us because nobody ever feels like they're getting enough customers. Um, so that's good. So they go, oh, well, I got a 4. We're getting some. I'd say not so much high quality, but what do you need to do to make that score higher? Well, we need to figure out how to get more customers. We need to get out and market ourselves more and so on, right? Um, so so let's say they at the end of the day they got 45 or something, um, and maybe a couple of them were high scores, so those are okay. Um, but they've got things that they know now they need to work on. The uh, One of the things that is interesting is when somebody sends you back a score of like 85 or something, right? That's actually really interesting. So if someone gives me an 85 on their scorecard, because mine's all automated, they make an appointment, scorecard goes out, they fill it out, they send it back to me. Okay. About half of the prospects do it. It's not mandatory, but it's a good idea if they do it. So they give me an 89 or something, right? And they think, oh yeah, I'm going to show Bill I got 89. Well, eh, I'm tempted to actually cancel the appointment because what it's indicating to me is that they're probably not coachable. They're not willing to admit that they have things they need to work on. And I know, and I run into those people. Um, so if you do run into someone like that, it doesn't mean they couldn't become a client. They would just be a difficult one because they'd be basically saying, "Well, I don't have anything to work on. Everything's great," And I'm going, "Why are we even meeting then? What are we doing here?" And so usually I'll just say, "Well, it sounds like you've really got your act together. I don't know if there's really anything I can help you with." And sometimes that ends the meeting, and I go, "Good," because there wouldn't be any time. What am I doing here? The person already saying they're perfect, right? And they may be, but typically it's more like they just can't admit that they have certain issues. So, anyway, so you end up having lots of experiences with this. The other thing that is really, really powerful about the scorecard is about value creation, because as you do the scorecard, you start to learn more and more about what people really going on with them. Like it's a deep dive, right? It's a discovery. And what you're finding is that the people um, might need things that you don't even know, right? You go, oh, we're discovering something here. There's a pattern. They all seem to have the same issue that we didn't realize before. Well, that sets you up to say, well, maybe we should start to help them with that, right? So it's like each one of the time you do the scorecard, it's like a little focus group. You're finding out more about your customers, and maybe things are changing. So now you're finding out new things that are going on. And so you realize, oh, okay, well, we need to adjust what we're doing. That's also new factory, by the way. Okay. So old factory is we're very rigid in what we're doing because we're selling hammers and that's it. Like we're just really trying to sell hammers. But now we're doing the scorecard and we're talking to people and we're finding out, you know what? They kind of got the hammer thing figured out. They need screwdrivers. We're discovering that they need screwdrivers. And you go, okay, now old factory would say, well, that's got nothing to do with me because I don't, I hate screwdrivers. Don't talk about them. But the new factory person says, screwdrivers. Maybe that's where we should go next, right? Maybe that's where we should move because that's where the marketplace is moving, right? Okay. So we haven't really changed our business because our business is doing that kind of moving, right? We're just always moving with what's needed, right? That's the business. It's not changing the business. That is the business. And we're also not changing our process because we're always doing the scorecard. So we've been doing the scorecard now, ours, for more than 25 years. And we've adjusted the scorecard a few times, but basically it's been the same one. And yet the answers and the stuff that we're learning from people as we're going along has changed because the world's changed. So it's helped us change because we're getting that immediate information, right? Um, that's the other thing I like about being an entrepreneur, and being in this world that we're in, which is very exciting but unforgiving, is that we are right on the edge of everything that's going on. So, I've said to my wife, I said, "Oh, there's a recession coming," and she'd say, "Well, nobody in the media is saying that." I said, "No, but I'm saying that." And so why is that? Because we're right on the immediate edge. I can see that that's how people are thinking right now. Their psychology is changing. It's a leading indicator, and sure enough, 6 months later, there's a recession. Not that I wanted one, but but that's what happened. And I go, because we are right on the leading edge of exactly what is really going on. So the scorecard is very entrepreneurial because it keeps you right there in the reality of what is actually happening right now. Okay. Not what's, and then that can tell you where things are going. So that's another reason why I like doing the scorecard, because it does keep me right up to date on what is actually happening in the marketplace, which is ultimately where reality lives, right? Okay. It's not what we think or, hope or whatever. It's just like, this is actually what's going on right now. Okay. So what are the, why does that, just sort of summarize here? Like, why does this work better? Right. Um, first step is, or a bit of advice is, stop selling. Like, don't send out a sales pitch. Okay. Um, say to people, listen, I can do a first stage with you. And the value of it will be that we're going to have the scorecard conversation, um, and we're going to figure out what your current situation is right now very clearly, and then start thinking about what you need to do to get to your objective. Not to say it's not a sales pitch. We're just going to do like a little workshop, little interaction like that, and it's free, and that's what I'm offering you. Now, if they don't want that, then they're probably never going to want anything. So don't worry about it. But they'll be more likely to say, no, that sounds useful. Let's have that scorecard conversation. So it will help you get more people to meet with you. That's the whole point. All right. But we're also not going to do a bait and switch on them. So when we have the meeting, we're not going to launch into a whole bunch of selling. We're just there to help them. Okay. We're just trying to find out what's going on with them. And so that's why it takes out that whole idea that you're the salesperson, right? And I have said many times, you don't want them to think of you as a salesperson. We all have to do sales, but we don't want people to think of us as a salesperson. So how do we make that happen, right? So we just have to be very helpful to them, and teach them useful things, and then help them figure out what to do, right? And whether and it's kind of like, well, even if you don't do it with us, then at least you know what to do, right? So that's got to be your attitude. So I'm just trying to help you get further ahead. Whether you want me to ultimately help you do that, that's fine, but it doesn't matter right now. I'm just trying to help you figure out what to do, and this is also much more efficient than doing a proposal. That's another rule we have. There's no proposals. Okay. I mean, in some cases, in some markets, you have to do a proposal because that's what they're expecting. I just advise people that if that's true, then maybe that's the wrong market to be in, because it's not a good game to play. If you have 10 people submitting a proposal, chances are they won't even read it. They'll just go right to the last line and say, well, oh, who's got the cheaper price? And then they might read that one or something. But so it's not a good deal. So instead, we go, no, we're going to go through this process. scorecard. There's other elements to this, but I'm just going to tell you about the scorecard today. Um, but at no time do they think of you as a salesperson. You're just somebody that's being extremely helpful to them, right? And as I said, the other reason why it works is because you're getting a lot of information from them. Now, another thing you can do is use this with your existing clients and customers. It's really powerful. So you can say to your existing customer, well, I want to have a scorecard conversation with you just to figure out, what to do next, right? And they say, why are you doing that with us? Why are you giving us these questions? And you'll say, well, we're just trying to figure out if there's something that we could help you with that we hadn't thought of before. So we're just kind of trying to get some information there. Like, it's hard for them to not like the sound of that, right? We're just trying to figure out if there's something that we're missing here that we could help you with that we hadn't thought of. So really, really good way to kind of also jumpstart or accelerate a relationship that you already have as well. Okay. Um, now, another benefit of this really is just the way of thinking of it is that we go from the sales pitch to a deep conversation, right? We're having a deep conversation with them because you say, well, what do you think you need to do to make that score higher, or why did you give yourself that score? That can lead to a lot of follow-up questions, right? They'll say, well, are you excited about what you're doing? No, I'm giving myself a 3. Why? Okay, because been doing this for a long time. Never wanted to do it in first place. I did this because my parents wanted me to do this. I got caught up in this thing. And then of course the next question would be, well, what is it that you really want to do? And then they start telling you they want to be a concert pianist or something, or a botanist, and living in the Amazon, right? That's probably a deep conversation that they've never had with anybody else, and that you just dug it out of them. Really, it's simple 3 questions, right? Um, one of my clients calls this the time to think session. So they've come up with their own name for it. So they have a 70-minute session with people, and they do it in this special room that they've created. It's called the time to think pod. I call it the time to think pod. That's what I called it. They had this office space with bunch of filing cabinets, and say, okay, why don't we take all that out of there, just paint it really nice, make a very simple room with a few chairs, a couple of chairs in it, and this will be the quiet time to think session. It's overlooking like a little ravine, and I mean it's really beautiful, and that's where they go with these business owners, one-on-one, and have the time to think session, and they do the scorecard, and then they sit there and they think about what's really want to do. I'm telling you, every person that's gone into that pod have come out as a member of his program, like, because they've never done anything like that before. Like, no one has ever had a deep conversation with them like that. And because we're all like going along the surface, right? We're just going along the surface, just trying to get by. Okay, we're gonna have a 70-minute time to think session. We're gonna have this deep dive. Now, another one of my clients calls it a deep dive conversation. And so and they have that deep dive, and it's like right away you've already established that you're different, right? Like that what you're doing is way more powerful than anyone else because you're actually willing to have the deep dive with them. Incredible, right? And that's when that relationship gets off to a really, really good start. Like, they've never had that with anybody else. And why? Because the salesperson's just trying to make a sale. Everything is about that, right? Got to get him to buy a hammer. Got to get him. Here's my hammer. Here's how great it is, right? Oh, you say you need screwdrivers. No, you don't need screwdrivers. You need a hammer. It's like, that's not a deep dive of anything, right? So I'm going to give you the link. Here, let me just grab that here. I got it handy now. I had it all ready to go. Oh, there we go. Okay. And you can fill that out if you want, now or later. So if you don't want to do it right away, then just book bring it up on your browser and then bookmark it and then go back to it later. But two things that'd be interesting for you to do: my big idea scorecard, just to find out about your big idea situation, but also to see how it works, right? So you see how we did it with an automation. So there's a little video you can watch, and then there you can do the scorecard. And then you get your report. I would get the report. So making it online is also really good. Okay. And this is another thing is I've actually said, I don't want to show it to you yet because it's not quite perfected, but I do have a AI now that can walk you through the scorecard, and can even elaborate on it and have a conversation with you and everything like this. So that's why I'm really excited about AI, because I'm taking what I've been doing in a sort of traditional sense, and making an AI that can actually do the scorecard with you. I don't know if I'd really want to have the deep dive conversation yet, because that's not really the point, but it can like get you ready for that deep dive or that time to think session, right? So but try that one out. Already in online form, maybe that's starting to feel like olfactory, right? Maybe AI is like, woo, okay. Um, so that's scorecard selling, okay. Um, and I maybe I'm overselling it. I don't know, but um, but I'm really keen on this approach. And and the other thing is that you can have more than one scorecard, right? So if you have different markets or different points in the relationship, you can have a different scorecards. Um, but I've had some people, they just gotten so hooked on it, they just like go crazy. Like they just can't believe how much better this all is than the way they've been doing it before, right? So, um, and really, if you think about it, that's what we're all trying to do. We're trying to take people who have a low score in something and trying to help them have a higher score. That's what we're trying to help them do. So it really helps to measure that. So we're taking something that's never been measured before and measuring it. And the other thing, you've probably heard the term gamification. Well, this is gamification, because as soon as you start having a score for something, you've turned it into a game, right? And so gamification is kind of the trend. It's good. I like gamification. We could overplay the hand a little bit and everything becomes a game, but that's another conversation. But basically, this is a fairly simple game that people can play, and they always want to get a higher score. So